Welcome, everybody, officially. We're here to talk about the Wallace Awards, but let me officially say welcome again and to let you know that you are appreciated and that I'm hoping that you find today a very practical sort of webinar for your own goals in life. Um, so I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Michael Luella. I am the manager for the Office of Community Engagement for the Center for AIDS Research here in Seattle. And I'll be joined today with Lewis. And Lewis, you've signed on. Do you want to say hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
All
Hello.
right. Greetings from Cancun, Mexico, everyone. This is my last official work duty before I log off for the rest of this weekend. But I'm happy that I get to spend some time with you all talking about the Wallace Awards. So, as it was mentioned, my name is Louis Shackelford, he, him pronouns. I am the director of the Office of Community Engagement here at the UW Fred Hutch CFAR. When I'm not doing the CFAR stuff, I am Director of External Relations at the HIV Vaccine Trials Network, which is based out of Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center. And I will leave it at that until it's time for me to speak.
All right. As well, we are joined by Kashette Ronan, who is also with us as one of the faculty members of the CFAR. And Kashette, would you like to say hello?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kesha Ronan. I use she, they pronouns. I'm joining you from the campus of the University of Washington, not Cancun, on occupied Duwamish land. And I am a faculty member in the Department of Global Health at the UW and also a member of the Developmental Corps. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you. And so we've used this weird term that you may not be familiar with, the CFAR, which stands for the Center for AIDS Research, and it's made up of all these institutions that you see, the University of Washington and Fred Hutch here in Seattle, as well as the others there, including Seattle Children's. So what is the mission of our CFAR? Well, what we do is basically advance the prevention, detection, and treatment of HIV and AIDS by fostering collaborative and interdisciplinary research. We also support the career development in young or early investigators. And we're also serving researchers and scientists here at our affiliated institutions. And you also heard me say that I'm with the Office of Community Engagement. And the Office of Community Engagement is really looking to provide leadership and support to the community of researchers at the CFAR here, as well as to broader local communities to support effective and responsive HIV-related science. So we try to do that by developing and enhancing and sustaining bidirectional partnerships between researchers and community. And we do that by trying to always advocate and guarantee that the meaningful involvement of communities in the design, implementation, and dissemination of research occurs, as well as trying to build the capacity among our researchers for doing this, all in the names of creating better science. And that's the real goal of the CFAR project and the OCE project. So some of the programs that we have, just to let you know, we have what you might know elsewhere as a CAB, but this is actually a different form of that. It's called our Community Consultative Group, and they are paid consultants that help us conduct our research here by giving us advice, and that also includes doing research reviews, as you'll see there on the lower right. They help us do consultations and review final submissions that we fund. We also have had in the past some working groups. We haven't had any recently, but you may have heard of in the past the Stigma Working Group. We also had a Black men who have sex with men group that was in Once in Play. So that's basically who we are. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kashette to review the Wallace Awards with all of you. And Kashette.
Thanks, Michael. Go to the next slide. So the Wallace Awards are named for Dr. Stephaun Elite Wallace, who was a scientist, social advocate, social justice advocate, leader in the LGBTQIA+ ballroom community, and champion of community-led research. And the Wallace Awards were really kind of envisioned by Dr. Wallace, and they are named in his honor. Next slide. And so the goal of these awards is to grow capacity for community-led HIV research by providing funding, mentorship, and support to community leaders. And through this, to also facilitate connections and collaboration between community-based organizations in Washington State and the Center for AIDS Research. So I'll start off by, I'll basically go through kind of some of the key things like in this RFA. So I'll start by just talking about who is eligible to apply for this award. People who are actively involved in and have a strong commitment to community-based HIV work in Washington State. These grants are awarded to organizations, not just to individuals. So the person who leads a proposal has to be an employee of the organization that is going to receive the Wallace Award, or have long-standing non-employee relationship with that organization. And we can talk a little bit about what that means if people have specific questions. This grant is not intended for people who are already involved in HIV research or who have advanced degrees. And so eligible applicants have a high school diploma or a GED, an associate's degree, a bachelor's or master's degree, or professional certifications. If you have a PhD, a JD, an MD, you are not eligible. And if you're already involved in HIV research, or like an HIV investigator, you are not eligible to apply. And also, if you are an employee of one of the CFAR affiliated institutions, you are not eligible. Next slide. So these grants are $5,000 to $20,000 per award, and then an award can be 1 to 2 years. And so the idea is that the size of the budget is kind of matches the complexity and duration of the proposed work, but $5,000 to $20,000. All right. So what does the application process look like? So May 30th, so a little over a month from now, we request a non-binding letter of intent. So that's just sort of like an intake process. If you subsequently change your mind and decide you don't want to go for it, that's okay. But we really, there's like multiple steps in the process. And so that letter of intent is really intended to kind of get the ball rolling. Within a month of that, we will make sure that the applicant has been matched with a mentor from the Center for AIDS Research. So that'll happen by June 30th. Next. And then between June 30th and the end of August, there are 3 consultations that are required. One is with the OCE, one is with the Data Science and Methods Corps, and one is related to budget. And the purpose of these consultations is to kind of provide support for the applicants, and just help kind of develop the application in line with the regulations that the Center for AIDS Research has. And then the final application deadline is November 1st. So by that point, you need to have the full project kind of laid out and all the application materials ready, which I'll talk about what those are. We plan to review the applications in January and hopefully make the awards in January. So the award period would be January 2025 to December 2027 for a 2-year project. Okay, so we will share the link to the application form, but here are the things that you will need to submit to that application form.
Sorry.
That's okay. So there'll be an online application form that needs to be completed. You'll need to provide detailed budgets for each 12-month period. The mentor that you're assigned will need to provide a letter of support that will have sort of an explicit statement that the mentor has read and discussed the application with you and that they're supportive of the submission, and then any other letters of support that you from other mentors. So mentoring. So we talked about matching to a mentor and then the mentor writing a letter. So what do we mean by mentoring, and what's the idea here? So just a little definition about what we mean by mentoring. So we consider mentoring a non-hierarchical shared learning that's really guided by the needs of the mentee, who in this case is the applicant. We will ask you in your letter of intent to provide some information about your project and what type of mentorship you would like and what your preferences are in terms of mentorship. And then we will match you with someone to the best of our abilities who meets your needs there. You're also welcome to identify your own mentor. People who are mentors have to be appointed at a US-based affiliate of the UW Fred Hutch CFA. So that's the UW, Fred Hutch, Seattle Children's, Access to Advanced Health Institute, and University of Hawaii at Manoa. So the goal of the mentor is that they meet with the community investigator throughout the application process to really help to give substantive input, to really help in whatever way the applicant wants to kind of pull the application together. Like we said earlier, the submission has to include a letter of support from the mentor, and you're also encouraged to include additional mentors, like at the community-based organization where the work will be conducted. And you can identify any additional mentors beyond that. That's totally fine. It's just the requirement is that one Center for AIDS affiliated mentor. Next.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And now I'll hand it over to Lewis.
Oh, thank you, Kashette. Sorry about the noise in the background. So my part of this presentation is really to break down the different types of projects. I know that that's going to be a key question, is what kind of projects are we looking for? And so we can't be all-encompassing of all projects that can be presented, but we did want to give you all an example of the kinds of projects that we're looking for in this project. So there are two kinds of HIV research projects that will be accepted. So first and foremost is traditional research projects. So traditional research projects are focused on biomedical intervention investigations, focus on biomedical investigations, basic science, clinical, epidemiological, social behavioral, and implementation science research. So more along the lines of what we traditionally look at as a research project. What I think makes this program really innovative is that we're also open and interested in non-traditional, what we're calling non-traditional research projects. So what do we mean by non-traditional research projects? So these are research projects that may not be immediately identifiable as research, but they do add to our knowledge and understanding of HIV science and service implementation. They also offer vital support. They may offer vital support to both HIV research initiatives, researchers, and research participants themselves. They enhance the capacity for conducting HIV-related research or establishing collaborative efforts, and they expand the scope of who is involved in conducting research, notably incorporating members from underrepresented communities affected by HIV. Also, and this is very important, that they prioritize the interests in issues critical to communities that are disproportionately impacted by HIV. So what are some examples of actual projects that can be undertaken using funds for the Wallace Awards? So this first slide is really indicative of some of the traditional research projects that one can undertake. So enhancing things like PrEP, treatment as prevention, uptake, and priority populations, uncovering factors that can increase HIV testing, understanding and developing tools to address HIV vaccine hesitancy, communicating about HIV cure research priorities and methods. These are a lot of things. I won't go through them all, but these are a lot of things that you would see as the focus of a traditional research project. I think is really interesting is when we go to the next slide, we see some examples of what we would call more non-traditional research projects. So this is simplifying complex scholarly articles for broader public consumption. Things like organizing workshops that can equip individuals with essential research skills, understanding facilitators and barriers to medication adherence. Some maybe a project that looks at an innovative way of strengthening patient-provider relationships to increase health outcomes. So really looking at how can we dig into the services, the models that already exist, and finding ways to better those models. That can be one example of a non-traditional research project. And continuing on to my final slide, also looking at this is kind of a mix. So creating community-friendly research materials and using social media platforms, executing community surveys, focus groups, qualitative interviews to gather firsthand data, innovative with new technologies, for instance, developing applications or chatbots to facilitate research processes, hosting hosting research-related events with community policymakers, health agencies, and researchers. So really using our broad knowledge of what community needs and different connections that you can make that maybe don't necessarily get brought into the research environment, really tapping into the innovative nature of working in community and seeing a 360 view, particularly from somebody in community, of what the needs are, and using all your resources and creativity to create a project that really impacts both community and the science. And so with that, we just want to open it up for questions. Thank you all again for taking this time with us, and thank you all for your interest in the Wallace Awards.
And so if anyone has a question, please just use the raise hand feature. That'll be the easiest way to make sure we see you, but also if you just wanted to speak up and unmute yourself, that's also acceptable. Araya?
Yes, you get brownie points. I usually get like Oreos or Orala, so thank you, Michael. I understand that applicants will not be considered if they're already currently engaged in research work. However, my agency is interested in pursuing research opportunities that may coincide with the funding of this grant. Would we still be considered able to apply?
Are you currently, can you say more about your organization and the type of work that you do?
Sure. I'm sorry. I should have introduced myself. Well, my name is Araya. I'm the Director of Business Development for Lifelong. And we have an opportunity to engage in research, clinical research that may start either later this year or early next. And so I'm wondering if we would be able to apply, because currently we are not engaging in research, but there is a possibility sometime in the coming year we might be.
Lewis, thoughts? You're muted.
Of course, I'm muted. So you're not, so if I understand correctly, you're not currently engaged in research, but you have aspirations to be involved, or you have, or is there a program or project that is actually starting that you know
No,
of?
correct. We are not currently engaged. We have an opportunity, a funding opportunity that we are actively pursuing that would involve research in this particular domain. But the award has not been committed. There's just strong interest on both sides, the funding party and our own.
And would this be the same project that the project you're seeking this award for, would this be the same one that you use for the Wallace Awards?
Not necessarily. Initially, when I read the RFP, I thought it would be a good fit, but if that would disqualify us, then no, we would pursue a different research product.
Okay. I see that Susan Mello from the CFAR has her hand up. She might want to chime in before we might want to hear from Susan before
I just want to make, I think what I'm hearing is maybe lack of clarity on our part of eligibility. So I think when we say that you cannot be an HIV investigator, I think we're referring to the individual, whereas for the eligible organization, it is okay if that organization has conducted or is conducting HIV research. So it's really more like the eligibility is more focused on the individual that will be applying.
Okay, great.
So if that answers your question, hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that was my thought as well, is that if you're not actively engaged in research right now and you're committed to doing a unique project for the award, I don't see why that would be an issue, even if you do secure funding for another project. Because the only way I see there being some sort of issue is if it takes away from your capacity to complete your project for the Wallace Awards, but I'm sure we could work that out.
Okay, thank you.
Jared, your hand's up.
Everyone, I think this is a really great opportunity that you guys are all extending to the community. So I just want to thank you for actually putting this out into the universe. I look forward to all of the applications that you get. I have a similar question to Araya, maybe a little bit more dubious in that I am an active HIV researcher with a terminal degree affiliated with the Hutch, but I also have affiliations with other organizations. And if I were to submit an application, it would be unrelated to the work that I do here at the Hutch and more affiliated with these other organizations. So where would my eligibility stand here?
So first and foremost, I want to acknowledge that this was a brainchild, as Cassette mentioned at the beginning of her presentation, of Dr. Stephaun and Lee Wallace, my mentor and the previous OCE director, the previous director of external relations at the VTN. So all credit to him. I don't know how he thinks of this stuff in the time that he had. He acted like there was 26 hours in the day while everybody else was working on 24. So I just wanted to acknowledge him and just pay my respects to him really quickly. So with that in mind, the spirit of this award is really focusing on people who are research naive and really honestly getting new people into the research space that may or may not felt like this was even a space for them. And so that is why we're focusing on not just traditional research projects, but also giving people opportunity to bring their creativity and ingenuity and cultural understanding, unique cultural understanding of the communities that they serve or live in, so that they can do a project that is really impactful. So I'm not saying that you cannot apply. I would say that the preference would be for somebody who is new to the research space.
Thanks.
Maybe I could just, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask follow-up questions, so go for it, Kesha.
Well, I was just gonna suggest that, like, depending on the organization and like who else is involved with it, like maybe someone else in the organization could lead it and you could be a mentor or, a structure like that.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. And then I've got a couple more granular questions, kind of just about like budgets and things like that in terms of, is it a requirement of the application to state whether you're going for a 1-year funding or 2-year funding and explicit budget values, or is that kind of flexible from the reviewer's point of view in the sense of like, I ask for $20,000 over 2 years, the reviewers see it as a viable project, but not for that. Will they come back and say, we'll give you $5,000 for 1 year, for instance?
want me to take that one?
Yeah, you can take that one, Kashep.
Yeah, I think it's both. So I think we would want you to, you need to submit a detailed budget, which includes like how long you want the project to be. And it might be that reviewers say, yes, we agree with everything you said, and we will give you this budget. Or it might be that we'll say exactly what you said, love the idea, but we can't afford all of it. And there might be a little bit of negotiation there. But from your perspective, I think coming up with like a realistic budget and timeline for your project is how you should approach it.
Yeah, cool. But we won't necessarily be like penalized for trying to shoot for the stars, for instance.
Absolutely not.
No.
Christopher, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I have two questions. One, so if I am trying to identify my own mentor, what are the qualifications I should be looking for? Like, what are the minimum standards for that person?
Yeah, we went through a few in Kashet's presentation. Do we want to pull those up again?
I can, yes, hold on. Oops, let me get this. All right, hold on one moment. And this is about the mentoring?
Yeah, what are the qualifications for a mentor?
Hold on.
Put
And
those back on
While
screen.
he's pulling that up, I think the main one is that they have to be affiliated with a CFAR institution.
I think I got that part. It's more about like what their education level should be. Do they have to be, doctorate level, or could it be somebody who has, who's done a lot of research and maybe is a doctoral candidate? That was more my question than I saw where they have to be affiliated with.
My perspective is that it should be someone seasoned in research and ideally in the type of research that you're seeking to conduct. And so I'm less concerned about the degree that they hold. I mean, I know that it's rare, but you do find some researchers with master's degrees. They don't have terminal degrees, but they are very, very seasoned in research and very adept at conducting either a particular type of research or particular, different research projects. So from my perspective, those are the most critical factors.
And so if I were to be submitting a non-traditional research project, something that was maybe like more marketing and like reach focused, would I be assigned a mentor that is not, sort of science-based, that may, going off of what you said, somebody who had a better understanding of that type of research?
Yeah, or I would honestly, I might pair you with a social behavioral science researcher. I think that would fall closest into that field. So I'd be looking in that realm, but I would also be looking for somebody who maybe has unique experience or specific experience in the area that you're focusing on as well. Does that help?
Yeah. And then one final question. So currently, I'm curious about like what the best way is to sort of identify an organization to be associated with. Like my current employer doesn't do anything along this line. So, but I do have sort of a long-standing volunteer relationship with another organization. So like what level of involvement am I asking for from another organization if I'm not an employee there? Like, are they part of this process, or I'm just sort of attaching their name to something that I'm doing the work on?
I would say that, I mean, that's a very good question. And we've had a lot of internal conversations along this line, actually, volunteer versus actual employee. I think we landed in the space of if you have a strong relationship with that organization, we know that there could be a situation where you could be a volunteer, but you may be running a whole program for an organization as a volunteer. So I think that will likely look at it in a more holistic way and what your relationship is, as opposed to just saying, you know, are you an employee? Are you a volunteer? Yes, no, and making a abrupt decision on that. It really is like, what is your connection to this relationship? How long you've been connected to this relationship, and what have you done in what has that connection to this relation to this organization produce?
But I guess the question more is like, what would I be asking of that organization? You know, I think that it would be no problem for me to attach. You know, I've had a long, you know, a nearly 15-year relationship with the organization I'm thinking of, and I have been an employee there, so I don't think that's the issue. It's more like, am I asking them to do work, and what does that work look like, or is it sort of on me, and they're just sort of like attached to it so that there's more weight.
And I think that could depend on the project. And I see you, Cassette. I think that could depend on the type of project that you're doing. So if you're doing a project that involves people from the organization being involved, then obviously that's going to require more of the organization and require a different type of relationship than if you were using some of the organization's resources to improve a particular program or something like that. Like people are not actively involved in what you're doing, but you're doing it within the confines or within the scope of the org. Kishette, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add.
Yeah, I think I wanted to add that like logistically, the money's going to go to the organization. So depending on like what the work is, like the organization is going to figure out how to spend the money, right? And so I think they are like the way we've imagined it is they would kind of have to be involved. And it could be that like, you know, they hire you as a contractor essentially, and like you do the work, but it still has to go through them. And so I think that like in review, yeah, I think we're going to want to see that like there is a true connection with this organization. And I think, which it sounds like there is. So does that help?
It does, yeah. I'm just trying to. I've got a couple of different affiliations, so
Yeah.
I think that maybe helps me to decide which direction I want to go in with it. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So what is everyone else thinking? Any questions or thoughts that you want to express? Jared, I see your hands up again.
Yeah, I've got more questions, but I'm happy
Sure.
to defer for a few more minutes if there's other people.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask whether there's equal weighting given to the traditional and the non-traditional research projects, and how you foresee the level of mentorship provided to a traditional research project, considering that you're prioritizing people that are research naive. Like if someone is proposing this really cool qualitative social behavioral research study, but they've never done any of those kinds of research, how is that going to be supported by the CFAR?
That's an awesome question. So the first part of your question, I think, is easier. Like, are we, you know, is there equal weighting to different types of projects? I think yes. I think that's like a core value of this mechanism. But you're right that there might be different mentorship needs. And so, you know, the CFAR, we've talked about the resources that are available at the CFAR, and so definitely like people who receive the Wallace Awards would have access to all of those resources, like trainings and core resources and all of those types of things. So I think that's a lot of how we're thinking like what you talked about, like, okay, I want to do this cool qualitative study, like how do I learn how to do that? I think that's a lot of how we're thinking about it. And we also recognize that like that's part of the value of the one-to-one mentorship relationship, and that different mentees need different things. And so that's kind of part of how we're talking to mentors about it. Lewis, Michael, do you want to add anything to that?
I think you were spot on. And only thing I can add is that's why we are going to really focus on trying to pair people up in that matching process, being really critical, because we want to make sure that you're with somebody who is seasoned in the area that you're seeking to focus on. because we know that having that someone who's very experienced in doing these types of research projects is critical to not just the learning environment, but we really want to make sure that people have a really good experience doing research and exposing and being exposed to research for the first time in this new way.
And all I wanted to add is in the RFA, you'll see the review criteria. This is what every project, no matter if they're traditional or non-traditional, what they're going to be judged on. And I'll let you all read that on your own. I did put the link to the chat, to the RFA in the chat. But you're going to be looking at the significance of the proposal with the CFAR priorities. We're going to be judging you based on the team and the investigator, the approach, the innovation and the original thinking around it, the community and stakeholder participation in the study, and the collaborative effort that is going into that. So those are the qualities that we're going to be looking at. And I just wanted everyone to realize that we tried to lay that out. So when you're thinking about your projects, you can be thinking about those sorts of qualities that we're looking to sort of reward with the award. And so that's what we're going to be using to judge what is a good project. And we're also going to be having not only the reviewers being researchers, but they will be community members that are non-conflicted with any of the applications that we receive. So there will be a mix of people deciding on who gets this award.
Can I just add one more thing about Jared's question around like how will we be supported to do things? So I think that what we're imagining is that like there'll be a lot of conversation with the mentor in the grant writing phase. And it could be that the mentor's guidance is like, this is a pretty complex project based on your experience level, like access this course, do blah, blah, blah. But I also think you should build in a consultant into your budget who can really work closely with you or something like that. Like the mentor might say like, I don't have capacity to like help you learn this. Like I can only meet with you, once a month or whatever, but here's my recommendation for how to like strengthen that skill set in your application. So I think there can be a lot of kind of problem solving with your mentor.
Thanks. That also answered another one of my questions of whether or not salary could be a budget item.
Yes, it can.
Other questions? Go ahead, Daniel.
Sure. I guess quick introduction. I'm Daniel Lindsley with Seattle Gay News. I'm a staff writer there. And
Hello.
Hi. And I was wondering if there is a sort of, for us non-researchers, if there's a call to action for the sort of readers, general public here, or is it just spreading the word?
I was really excited. I thought you might be submitting something.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh, a journalist. That'll be cool. Sorry, go ahead, Louis.
I would say it's a little bit of both. I mean, we want you to spread the word, most certainly. We definitely need that, and we want people far and wide, and we want people to understand, like, research can be so intimidating, and this is an opportunity to take something that is usually very intimidating, sometimes off-putting, and bring in people and perspective that normally don't get a chance, don't get an opportunity to be involved. So I think in some ways that is us asking to spread the word about this, but also it's a call to action that research can be more inclusive than what it is. And
Right.
we're working within the CFAR to make sure that happens, and it happens in a real way.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would love to add just that I really see this as a very malleable mechanism for people to make certain things come true. They might not be your dreams, but if you've ever sat there and wondered, like, I wonder why people haven't asked my group about X, Y, or Z related to HIV, or I would like to attend these conferences that people go to every summer and come back and teach my community what was there. And maybe I'll work with a community organization to do that. I mean, so I really see this non-traditional part of the application, really malleable for your needs as an individual as well as for an organization. It's really about enhancing your capacity to be around researchers and to do research or tolerate the language of researchers and understand certain things about them. But whatever that looks like for you all, it could be anything. And I really hope you see this as an opportunity of really dreaming about what you could potentially do, whether it's actually a traditional research project or a research adjacent project, something that's just related to research. And that's a non-traditional project that we're looking to fund equally. So I think of it, I get excited every time I think about the potential, and I'm just hoping that people will see that potential and sort of reach for the stars with it.
Got it. Yeah, I'll try to angle things so that people see that, that it's a open invitation. It's not for just elites and all that.
Yes. And we're looking to give you support. So the whole reason for the consultations is
Yeah.
really making it the best thing that you can do. You know what I mean? Like, it might be that you're pretty good at it already and you don't need a lot of mentoring or a lot of consultation, but that's just a way of making sure that you're thinking about everything in terms of the budget. I know if I were going for this, I would need lots of support around the budget part, because I've never balanced a checkbook in my life. And so I would need,
Yeah, so would I.
so, that's why we have that stuff in there to make this really successful for the people.
Very cool. All right. Thanks.
The last thing I would like to say is that, one of the driving forces for me in this project is oftentimes we hear what researchers, academics think are the biggest issues facing different communities. We don't actually get a lot of chances and opportunities to hear what are the biggest research questions from a community.
Right.
And to Michael's point, I think this is an opportunity for research, for people in community to come up and say, this question matters to me. How can we build a study, a project around it, or at least get some focus on it? It may be the case that you bring up a question that requires a huge clinical trial, and that's fine. But maybe we can get the ball rolling on getting some qualitative work done to get that question on the radar of researchers so that we can get to the place where this community gets this question answered on a bigger scale. Because a lot of those big scale clinical trials start as small questions that bubble up in research circles until they get to the place where they get enough attention and enough funding to move forward into bigger trials.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Daniel, if you need any other contact, please feel free to reach out to me.
Of course. Yeah.
Great. Other thoughts, other questions that people may have?
Michael, you want to since you mentioned your contact information, do you
That's
want
what I realized I put it on the last slide, but I'm just going to put it into the chat for everybody instead of putting it in the slide, and you just pull up the slide for people to copy it down. I'll put it in the chat so you can all have it.
Excellent.
One moment here. Copy, paste, and then I'll put it in the chat there. So you should be able to see that in the chat there. So email's the easiest way. My first initial, my last name, mluella@uw.edu. I do have an office phone. I'm in the office on Mondays. And so that might not be the best way to get me. I can always check my messages from elsewhere. But you can send the emails. You'll always get a response email-wise if you send it to mluella@uw.edu. That's the best way to get in touch with me. Well, so we're almost at the hour. It doesn't look like we have any other questions. So I wanted to thank you all for joining us. And I wanted to give Cachette and Lewis the chance to have some last words before we sign off.
I feel like I talked a lot, Cachette. I'm gonna give it to you.
All right, I'll say something and then you can have the last word. Yeah, we I hope you can tell, we're really excited about this. It's really innovative and new, and that might mean that you ask us questions and we say, I don't know, let me talk to the rest of the team about it, because we're kind of inventing it as we go. But yeah, really, we're just really excited to see what you all come up with and what questions you ask and how this process will evolve over the coming years.
All I'll say is Dr. Wallace's legacy was empowering communities to take ownership of the their needs and the challenges that they face. And so I see this award as being a direct extension of his legacy, and I'm so glad that it bears his name because I think it's the start of something great.
Thank you very much. You all have a pleasant rest to your day. Thank you for taking time and joining us, and realize that if you had a question and you just didn't know to answer it or to ask it now, you can always reach out, mluella.uw.edu. You can always send it there and we'll get you your answers. Good luck, everybody, and have a blessed evening.
You too. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Everyone.